All right, let's step back in time. We're going to one of the darkest and honestly most thrilling periods in English theater, the Jacobean Age. And we're diving deep into John Webster's absolute masterpiece, The Duchess of Malfi. This is a seriously shocking story about corruption, forbidden love, and brutal revenge that even 400 years later still has the power to get under your skin. So let's figure out what makes this play such a timeless and terrifying classic.
So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the anxious world that created these plays. Then, we'll break down the recipe for the era's signature genre, the revenge tragedy. After that, we'll jump right into Webster's play, get to know its incredible characters, and finally, ask why this dark, dark story still hits so hard today.
You've really got to wonder, right? What happened? I mean, sure, the age of Shakespeare had its tragedies, but the plays that came next, they took a hard turn into something way more cynical, way more violent, and just psychologically twisted. And that's the big question we're tackling. Why did everything on stage, and in England itself, suddenly get so bleak?
And to get to the bottom of that, we have to start right here. We've got to look at the world outside the theater doors. Because you just can't understand the plays unless you understand the deep, deep sense of anxiety that was gripping the whole country.
I mean, look at this. It's like night and day. The Elizabethan era, under Queen Elizabeth I, that was seen as a golden age, right? A time of national pride, confidence, a frolic for life. But then she died in 1603, and poof, all that optimism just vanished. The Jacobean age that followed was the complete opposite, full of frustration, disappointment, and this gnawing political uncertainty. The whole mood of the country just soured.
So to put it simply, the Jacobean era, named for the new king, James I, was basically a cocktail of political instability, religious fighting, and just this constant, humming social anxiety. It was a really paranoid time, and you know what? That paranoia seeped into absolutely everything, especially its art.
And a huge chunk of that anxiety, it came from the new guy on the throne himself, James I, was a super-educated scholar, but politically, he was just clumsy, totally out of touch. And this nickname they gave him, the wisest fool in Christendom, it just nails that contradiction, doesn't it? The guy was book smart, but he had zero common sense when it came to politics.
And you can see the results of his rule right here. His court was a total mess, a nest of corruption where you could literally buy a knighthood. There were plots and conspiracies everywhere. You've probably heard of the big one, the gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament. And on top of all that, the king himself pushed this idea that God put him in charge, so he could do whatever he wanted. So is it any surprise that people became deeply cynical about power? That theme became central to the plays of the day.
So in this dark, anxious, pressure cooker of a society, a new type of play didn't just show up, it absolutely exploded. It's called the revenge tragedy, and believe me, it had a very specific and very bloody recipe for success.
Okay, so here's the formula, and it's pretty wild. It was heavily inspired by this old Roman playwright named Seneca. Step 1, start with a secret, horrible murder. Step 2, you might get a visit from the victim's ghost, demanding you get even. Step 3, the hero goes on a quest for vengeance, which usually involves pretending to be crazy and hatching all these complicated schemes. And the grand finale? A massive bloodbath, where pretty much everyone dies. It was shocking, it was violent, and audiences could not get enough.
But hey, it wasn't just about the body count. Nope. There was another major influence stirring the pot, and he came from the world of political philosophy. His name was Seneca Machiavellian. And his book, The Prince, had been read by everyone, and, maybe more importantly, misunderstood by everyone.
And this is where we get that classic stage villain, the Machiavel. You know the type, a master manipulator, totally cynical, who believes the ends always justify the means. They're these brilliant schemers who treat other people like chess pieces. And Jacobean plays, especially Webster's, are just crawling with them.
You can actually watch this genre level up over the decades. It started with early experiments like Gorboduc. Then it became a total blockbuster with the Spanish tragedy. Shakespeare, of course, made it deep and philosophical with Hamlet. And then in 1614, John Webster comes along. He takes all those pieces and just perfects the formula with the Duchess of Malfi, adding this layer of psychological realism and poetic darkness that was completely off the charts.
Which brings us right to the main event, Webster and his dark masterpiece. See, he wasn't just writing a simple horror story. He was giving us this profound, unflinching look at human nature in a world gone wrong.
You know, it's funny, we actually don't know a ton about John Webster, the guy. But here's what we do know.
His plays acted like a lightning rod for all the anxiety of the Jacobean age. He saw the world as this incurably corrupt place where evil was a real, powerful force, and his genius was taking that bleak vision and spinning it into some of the most powerful, haunting poetry ever written for the stage. So what's the play actually about? Get ready, it's a doozy. You have a young, widowed Duchess. Her two powerful brothers tell her, you can never, ever remarry. So what does she do? She defies them. She secretly marries her steward, Antonio, a good guy but way below her in social class. Well, when her brothers, a corrupt cardinal and a super unstable duke, find out about her secret family, they unleash this unbelievably cruel campaign of psychological torture that ends in murder. And, true to form, it all ends in a bloodbath that takes them all down.
But look, a shocking plot is one thing. What really makes this play a masterpiece that has lasted for centuries are the people in it, this cast of incredibly complex characters. So let's meet them.
First up, at the very center of this storm, is the Duchess herself. In a world that's just filled with scheming, violent men, she is this absolute beacon of courage, passion, and dignity. She knows the danger, she knows the risks, but she chooses love and her own freedom over what her oppressive family demands. And this one line says it all. She speaks it at her lowest moment, right before her murderers strike. They've taken everything from her, her power, her family, her freedom. But her identity, who she is at her core, that remains unbroken. It is one of the most powerful statements of defiance you'll find anywhere in literature. I am Duchess of Malfi still. Wow, just gives you chills.
And on the other side, you've got her tormentors, her two brothers. They're like two different faces of pure evil. Duke Ferdinand is just raw, hot-headed rage. A perverse and turbulent man who is so violently obsessed with his sister it feels, well, incestuous. The Cardinal, though, he's the opposite. He's the cold, calculating Machiavellian villain. Treacherous, pitiless, and he masterminds the whole horrific plot with this terrifying, icy detachment.
But maybe, just maybe, the most fascinating, the most complicated character in this whole tangled web is this guy, Bosola. And Webster basically introduces him with a question that gets right to his core. What is he? A spy? A killer? An avenger?
So Bosola starts out as what they called a malcontent, basically a smart, cynical guy who's bitter because he feels like the world owes him something. The brothers hire him to spy on the Duchess. He then becomes their hitman, the one who tortures and ultimately murders her. But here's where it gets wild. As he's doing all this, he starts to admire her incredible courage. And after she's dead, he's just wrecked with remorse and turns on his bosses, trying to avenge the very woman he just killed. I mean, talk about complicated. He's a villain who grows a conscience, and it makes him one of the greatest anti-heroes in theater history.
So, okay, we've got blood, betrayal, and all this horror. But after 400 years, why are we still talking about this play? What makes it more than just an old-school shocker?
Well, the reason is that if you wipe away all that 17th century dust, you see us. You see our world. It's a timeless look at how absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's an incredibly powerful story about a woman fighting for her own life in an oppressive patriarchal system. And that struggle still resonates so strongly today. And it asks these huge moral questions. What is justice in a world that isn't just? Webster's dark vision is that evil eventually burns itself out, but man, it often takes the good people down with it.
And that's what the play leaves you with, isn't it? This final, haunting question. The Duchess chose to stand up to the corrupt world she lived in. She paid the highest price imaginable, but she never, ever lost herself. So, was it worth it? The play doesn't give you an easy answer, and that, right there, is exactly why it's still a masterpiece.